Hi, this is Sharon Colpin. I'm the Youth Services Consultant for the Vermont Department of Libraries, and this is my web series, What is Sharon Reading? I know, I'm a little remiss the last couple of months. I'm very, very sorry. I've been sick, and I haven't been reading as much as I should, which is terrible because this is the time of year for awesome, awesome children's books. So let me just give you a little refresher on how to get to this information. And the archive videos. So if you go to libraries.vermont.gov and you click on Services for Vermont Libraries, then you can click on Children and Teen either here in the side or in the center. So from here, what I would recommend that you do is click on the Youth Services Toolkit. This is a new feature that I've just created. If you bookmark this page will give you pretty much anything that you're looking for, all the recordings of all my past programming, information about programs like summer reading, letters about literature, the book awards, the Facebook page, everything you could possibly need here. And then right here is the Reader's Advisory and Collections information. And if you click on it, it'll take you right here to the video series. So you can see I just did one for new books. I'm calling it early October because I am going to do one in later October. And then this one will go right in here. And I archive everything. So that's where you can find all of that. And then this is Library Thing. If you've never used Library Thing before, I would suggest that you go down here, how to use Library Thing. This is a little tutorial on how to use it. And you can see what I'm reading and use all the good tools that are here. Okay, so let's get started. Like I said, I haven't been reading quite as much as I should be, but I have read some gems, and I really want to tell you about them. The first one that I finished was The Infinite in Between by Carolyn Mackler, and this was just a phenomenal book. I love Carolyn Mackler. She wrote The Earth, My Butt, and Other Big Round Things. She wrote Tangled. She has a gift for weaving together stories in a way that seems almost effortless, and it doesn't seem like a writing exercise, like someone was just trying to challenge themselves. It seems like it had to be written that way, and I just love that about her. This book is wonderful. It's about 5 best friends, I think. Actually, let me go to the Amazon page. Just a sec. Sometimes Library Thing doesn't have the full write-up, and I want you guys to see, so I don't mess up the names. It's always good to have the synopsis here. Okay, so this is about 4 friends. They meet, well, they're not actually friends. They're just 4 random students. They meet at freshman orientation, and they couldn't be more different. 5 students. See, this is why you got to keep me honest. I keep this page open. They meet at freshman orientation. I don't remember where in the country they are, kind of anywhere, USA. And they could not be more different. And this little synopsis talks about the Breakfast Club. And I think there's a little bit of that here, but they're not stereotypical. So you have Zoe, whose mom is like super famous and is in rehab, and Zoe's just kind of trying to be anonymous, and it's not going very well, and she thinks she's only in this town temporarily, and that she's moving back to LA, but her family situation is not ideal, but she can't be invisible the way she wants to be. And then you have kids like Gregor, who is in love with Whitney, and Whitney is like the most popular kid in school. You have Jake, who's in love with his best friend, who had a very bad reaction to the fact that they had a drunken makeout session, and they had a falling out, and so you go and follow him on his trajectory. And then you have Mia, who's kind of trying to find her own identity, and she's really struggling with that. So the 5 of them are these very, very different students, and they go off on their own kind of trajectories, and then they meet up again at the end of the book at senior graduation from high school, and you don't know how this is going to pan out. So it's told obviously in multiple perspectives, and each person has a very unique a very unique perspective and sense of what's going on around them. But their stories they don't intertwine exactly. They just bump up against each other, which is so fascinating. And then at the end, they come together. So it's kind of an exploration of high school through 5 different lenses. It's not like they're best friends at the end, but they do come together and have a little ceremonial gathering, which is fabulous. It's a wonderful book, and I think it really captures that sense of high school, of trying to find your place, how to define yourself, and figure out where you're going. So I would highly recommend it if you have high school kids in your library. All right, next is one that I did not like as much. Barry Laga, I really love, but I have to say, I'm not surprised after reading it that there are 3 separate authors. There's something a little, I don't know, disjointed about this book. It's okay. It's kind of reads like an updated fairy tale, but not quite. It's got this dystopian stuff that everyone loves. It's in the future, and so right now they're in these like mega cities, and these magistrates run them. And there's this girl named Deidre, and she is an orphan, and she is a scavenger. And one day she meets this boy named Rose, who is kind of just appears one day, and she has no idea where he came from, and he's very secretive. And so she's trying to figure out what his deal is. And meanwhile, the magistrate's son is murdered, and they blame Rose. And it turns out, I'm going to spoil it for you. Are you ready? You can turn the volume down if you're afraid. I'm going to spoil it. Rose is actually a plant. He is like a rose plant. He's some sort of scientific experiment. Now, some books have kind of played with this idea, and I like the idea of the mad scientist and the pushing the boundaries of kind of, gene enhancement and how far do we push our humanity. But I don't know, this story just seemed a little strange to me. It didn't have the typical Barry Laga spin. Like, I was really looking for something kind of dark and gritty with a great ending, and it didn't do it for me. I found the whole Rose thing kind of bizarre. Yeah, in the beginning, I was totally hooked, but then by the middle of it, I was like, what? He's a plant? Okay. So if you have kids that are really into this stuff, they might like it. If not, I would skip it, especially if you have space issues, which we all do, because I just don't think it's going to go well. Next, Castle Hangnail. This is a middle grade book. It's one that we've been talking about for the Canfield Fisher Award, and I did not think I would like this book. Ursula Vernon, of course, wrote Dragon Breath. And so I thought maybe, but then I saw the cover and I was like, nah, I'm not a huge fantasy fan. But this book cracked me up. I listened to it on audio and it was hilarious. So it's a story of this little girl, and let me pull it up on Amazon for you. I love the name of it, first of all, Castle Hangnail. And so it's about this girl who's kind of like, she's like a witch in training. And her name is Molly. And so I guess there's some sort, I'm not actually sure how she found out, but when a castle has an opening for an evil overlord or something, witches show up to apply for the job. And so she was like, hi, I'm here. I hear you have a vacancy. And she shows up. And the minions in the castle are like, what? You're a little girl. This can't be possible. And she says, no, I really am a wicked witch. And she tries to prove that she's wicked. Well, you come to find out that she's not actually a certified wicked witch, that she's kind of fudged part of it, and that her parents don't actually know where she is. And that the problem is that there's a board of magic that has to certify that each castle has a wicked witch as part of their staff. And if they don't, they get decommissioned, which is terrible. So they want to hang on to Molly long enough to get approval from the board, but they're not sure she can actually pass the tests. And so you have all these like crazy minions, and one of them is like a slimy, and one of them, there's like an Igor character, and they're just hilarious characters, all of them with awesome personalities. And they're trying to help her study for these tests, and they're just hysterical. And of course, the board is evil, kind of a la the Ministry of Magic from Harry Potter. And so they're trying to undermine her, and they really want her to fail. But it's a happy ending in the end. But I think the idea of it's kind of like an extreme dress-up situation where this girl she really, really wants to be an evil sorcerer or an evil witch, and so she kind of jumps into it, and she's not quite ready, but she does it anyway. And I thought it was good fun. I think that your young kids are going to like it. They suggest for 4 to 6. Yeah, that's exactly where I would put it. And great, funny, and I think that any kid who likes this kind of fantasy, it's not like hardcore fantasy, but it's fantasy with a lot of human characteristics thrown in, which I just love. So I highly recommend that one. And it looks like it's going to be a series, so that could be good. Well, everything's a series these days, right? All right, so the 7th most important thing. I love Shelley Parasol. She just writes wonderful, wonderful stuff. She wrote one of my favorite books, which the title of it is escaping me right now. It's the one about the tetrahedrons. Let me see. I know, I'm a librarian and I rely on Amazon. It's a thing. She wrote, where is it? Of course they're not going to tell me. Come on, Shelley Parasol. What else? All of the above. I love this book. Love, 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 love this book. It's older, obviously, but I was not disappointed by this one. I read it actually while I was sick. It took me a while to read it, but it kept me hanging on, which was wonderful. So this story is one of the most unusual stories I've ever read. And you read her afterward, and she's been kind of trying to write this story for a long time, and you can tell. So this story is about a kid, I think he's about 12, and his dad has just died, and he's going through some anger issues, and his mom donated a bunch of his dad's old clothes to a homeless organization, and he sees there's this local kind of bagman in town. He lives in DC, and he goes around collecting junk, and he's just kind of, the kids consider him to be a nuisance. And he sees this guy wearing his dad's hat, and he gets really upset. And before he even knows it, he's thrown a brick at this guy's arm, and he ends up in juvenile detention, and then he ends up in court. And what happens is that this guy, who everyone calls the junk man, he shows up in court and tries to argue for leniency, which is incredibly generous. And what he says is that if the boy will come and help him on his project, that it's like 120 hours of community service, that he shouldn't have to be punished anymore. He shouldn't have to go back to juvenile detention. And of course, this kid, Arthur, is ecstatic because who wants to go to juvenile detention? So anyway, he goes, his first assignment is to show up at the bagman's house. And of course, it's behind an old tattoo parlor, and he can't find it. And he meets these wonderful characters, and it's a garage, and he has no idea what he's doing there. And there's a note left there for him, and it says, Arthur, the 7 most important things, and they're things like light bulbs and mirrors and what's the rest of them? Oh, tinfoil and wood, planks of wood. And basically what his assignment is just to go and find these things. And it's DC, and it's winter, and he has a shopping cart and not much else. And so he has to slog through the city and try to find things that people have thrown out to bring them to this man, and he has no idea why. Well, he comes to find out that this man is creating this work of art in the garage, and he calls it heaven. And he says he's creating heaven. And of course, there's lots of symbolism with the seven things and the 7 levels. But he is on the spiritual path, and you find out that he's sick and he's actually dying. But he's trying to create heaven with all of these found objects. And so, of course, Arthur, this being a children's novel, Arthur becomes more and more attached to him. And really looks forward to working with him, and he even enlists a friend, the first friend he's made since his dad died. They really bond over this, and the two of them help create this piece of art. And then, of course, he's got a parole officer and his parents who don't really understand how attached she's gotten to this man. And then I'm going to spoil it for you. Spoiling. The man dies. He's very sick and he dies. And of course, he doesn't have a will. And so this kid has to figure out what to do because he promised to protect Heaven. And so I'm not going to tell you what happens at the very end, but it's really thought-provoking, and the city just it comes alive, and this kid, he finds another reason to fight, something else to fight for. And of course, this is a book about grief and about connecting with other people, and it was just really spectacularly well done. And if you hand this to a kid, encourage them to read the author's note at the end. There's some great photos. This whole story was based on a real person, and I think the kids would get a huge kick out of seeing the photos in the back of the real work of art that was called Heaven, that she based the story on. So I highly, highly recommend this one. She does not disappoint. Okay, next, changing gears a little bit. Adrift, Paul Griffin. Now, Paul Griffin is very well known for short, intense, adventure-driven books, and this one is very much in line with that. I thought this book was great. It's gritty. There's lots of blood and guts, lots of adventure. It's kind of like I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like Lost, only it only takes place in like the span of a couple of months. So it's about these kids, and they, through these strange circumstances, they're on a beach in, I think they're in Brooklyn maybe, and I'm not sure, maybe the Hamptons. So they're in New York somewhere, and they're on a beach, and one of the girls decides to go waveboarding or something, and she gets knocked over by a dolphin. And so some of the other kids go out to save her, and they all kind of know each other, but they're not really. They're kind of like one person removed, and two of them are from another country. I can't remember which one right now. I want to say maybe Brazil. And anyway, they end up on a ship on a boat together, and this storm washes them out to sea, and they have no idea where they are, and of course their cell phones aren't working, and they can't call for help, and it's the setup is a little contrived, but that's okay. And so you have these four characters, and they have to figure out how to survive. And first they think they'll be found any day now, and so they're not really that worried about it. But after they're on the ocean for a good couple of weeks, and a couple of them get injured, and one of them dies. I'm spoiling it for you. They really have to figure out if they can survive out there. And they do get swept up in a hurricane at one point, and they think that they have traveled, hundreds of miles, when in fact they haven't traveled that far at all. And so sprinkled in the novel are Coast Guard reports. And so the Coast Guard's looking for them, and of course it ebbs and flows depending on how many clues they have, because they try to they kind of write them off at one point. They're like, we're spending too much energy on this. These kids probably ran away, and then there was a big storm, and they're like, we're never going to find them. So the suspense is intense in this story. It does have a hopeful ending. Not exactly happy, but hopeful, and it's a really quick read. So if you have kids who are reluctant readers, like middle school age, or kids who just want something fast and furious and packed full of adventure, I would highly recommend this one. Be warned, it's full of blood and guts, though. Lots of blood, lots of violence, lots of if I die, should you eat me kind of conversations. So it's not for the faint of heart, but it's really, really well done. I think we could use more kind of books like this that are just kind of raw energy. It's good stuff. All right, so Jonathan Mayberry. I adore Jonathan Mayberry. He wrote Rotten Ruin. which is, I think, one of the best zombie novels ever written. I absolutely adore him. And so when this series came out, this is the first book in the series, I thought, I have to read this. First of all, I'm going to tell you I hate the cover. I really, really do. He looks stoned or something. I don't know. I'm hoping that the paperback comes out with maybe something a little bit better. So my pitch for this book. This book has all of the violence and the man-eating bugs that Grasshopper Jungle was missing. So Grasshopper Jungle, if you haven't read it, it won the Horn Book Award last year. It's an Andrew Smith book, and it has more sex and violence in it, and I just kept waiting for those grasshoppers. And I was like, come on, I want the grasshoppers. I want them to kill some people, and it just wasn't there. This book has it all. So this book has all the violence, none of the sex. So it's definitely, middle school, maybe younger book. It's lots and lots of violence, lots of craziness. It takes place in Louisiana. There are aliens who have come from these kind of pods that have been attacking Earth for a long time, and these bugs with these life lights that glow, and they have to kill them, and it's crazy, really, really crazy. And then I was just going to see what age group they recommend. They say 5 to 8. Yeah, I think that's probably right. So he gets entangled with these kind of subpopulations. And so there's a population of, they call them the Nightsiders. They're orphans, and they are trying to fight these aliens, but it also turns out that they have their own special skills, and because they do, they're kind of ghosty, vampire-y kind of stuff. They're also shunned by the humans because they don't quite fit in either. Now, I will say that this book is long. It's a lot longer than I expected. I listened to it on audio. Let me see how many pages. It's 400 pages. Around halfway, I started to get a little tired, but kids who like this high kind of fantasy adventure stuff, they're going to love it. This is just, the world building is wonderful. It's true Mayberry style, really complex and intricate, and this is going to be a series, and I think that your middle school, especially your middle school boys, but your middle school kids are going to love it. Who couldn't love monsters and aliens and goodness? It's going to be great. All right, so I recommend that one. On a little more serious note, Echo by Pam Munoz-Ryan. It took me forever to read this book. It's been sitting on my shelf for like 6 months. And I think part of it is because it's enormous. It's 592 pages. Oh my God. I kept thinking, no, I can't do that. That's huge. But I listened to it on audio, and I adored it. It gave me chills. It was so good. I just loved it. So it's a really interesting piece of writing. There are 3 stories, and each story they all take place during World War II, but different kind of pieces of World War II. The first story is about Friedrich in Nazi Germany, the rise of the Nazis, the rise of the Hitler Youth, and then you have Mike, who's in Pennsylvania, and he's an orphan kid who's, just having a really tough time trying to find a family, and things are not going well. He has a little brother to protect. And then Ivy, who's in California in the beginning of the Japanese internment camps, and her family is Hispanic, and they're fighting kind of a crazy mix of racism and living through this terrible time in American history. So these 3 stories are told separately. So it's not alternating perspective so much as kind of vignettes. So first you hear all of Friedrich's story, then you hear all of Mike's story, then you hear all of Ivy's story, and kind of they're sandwiched by, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a folk tale, and it's this folk tale about this forbidden forest and these 3 sisters and this prophecy and a harmonica. And no, I'm not a folktale kind of person, but it was kind of fascinating. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, harmonica. But then it picks it up at the end of the story, and it made me go back to reread the beginning, because at the end of the story, it ties it all together. So the thing that these three kids have in common is the harmonica. They all play music and they all breathe music. And of course, the three of them are all living in very difficult times. And so, Nazi Germany, not big on harmonica playing or any music that isn't approved by the Third Reich. Mike is an orphan and he's trying to protect his brother, playing a harmonica, not big on the list. Plus, his evil orphan, whoever was in charge of the orphanage, kind of reminds me of Miss Hannigan from Annie. She took his harmonica away. He starts playing the piano, and then they get adopted by this rich woman who's lost her baby, and she's not sure that she wants them, and so she's not particularly stable. And he is set to run away, and then the story ends. And then Ivy, she lives in this house in California, and they're in Orange County, and the house was owned by a man who was in an internment camp. He's Japanese, and he thinks he's going to come back, and so they're trying to take care of the house for him, but people are not being very supportive, and they want to take it away and vandalize, and she's friends with this white girl who lives on the same property, and they are forced to go to separate schools because Mexicans are not allowed to fraternize with the white kids. But she meets a music teacher who takes her under his wing and teaches her the flute because she's so good at the harmonica. So I'm going to ruin the end for you. Spoiler alert! The three of them end up in a concert at, I think it's the Philadelphia Philharmonic at the very end. No, it's not, because they're in New York. Okay, so they're in New York. They're all in the Philharmonic. Friedrich is the oldest, so he's the conductor. Mike is a famous pianist, and Ivy is just starting out as a flautist in the Philharmonic. And of course, they come together. They don't know each other at all, but you know all of them, which is fascinating. So you don't get to hear the ends of their stories. Like, they all end kind of on a cliffhanger. So, like, you don't know if Mike's going to run away. You don't know if Friedrich's going to be drafted into the Hitler Youth. You don't know if Ivy is ever going to be able to play music. And then it turns around and they're all in this concert together. And through kind of the exposition, you hear a little bit about what happened to them in the time between, and then it wraps up with this folktale, which is just fascinating. The way it's woven together is just magical. I highly recommend this book. It is long, it is dense, but it is so good. I just think any kids that you have that are interested in music are going to want to read this. Any kids that are interested in historical fiction, like me, they should read this. It looks big, but if you describe it to them as there's 3 separate stories inside, it might make it a little more manageable. Definitely one that I am considering for the Canfield Fisher Award. All right, another of my favorite authors, Jennifer Choldenko, has a new one called Chasing Secrets. She wrote Al Capone Does My Shirts, which is just one of the best series ever. I love those books so much. And so this cover's crazy. It takes place in San Francisco in 1900, and it's about the plague, which is fascinating. I didn't realize that there was an outbreak of the plague in 1900 in San Francisco, but this is about so much more. So you have this kid, and she is it used to be a gold town, but they're trying to make it the Paris of the Pacific. And so they're trying to make San Francisco more European. So there are these big balls and these prep schools, and they're trying to make everybody fancy. But she reminds me a lot of Calpurnia Tate. She follows her dad around. He's a physician. And, he helps people for jars of jam, and, he's not getting rich off of it. And she helps him. And at that time, women are not doctors, but she really loves it, and he teaches her how to do everything, which is just so exciting. But this is the point where there is a quarantine in Chinatown in San Francisco. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, you know Chinatown is enormous. It's a huge part of the city, and it was back then as well. And there was a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment, and they decided to quarantine the entire part of the city for no other reason than that they didn't like the Chinese and they wanted to blame them for something. And then on top of that, there was a plague outbreak, but the government was trying to keep it hush hush, and the Surgeon General was lying about it. And so doctors didn't have a lot of support. And so people were getting sick, but they were being hidden. And it's just fascinating, completely fascinating. And then you add into it the beginning of the media. So you have Hearst, who has the big, big newspapers in the time. And then this main character, Lizzie, her uncle, also owns a big newspaper. And they're kind of fighting about what they should publish and what is newsworthy and whether they should publish that there's the plague or not. And it turns out there's a lot of bribery going on, and it's just really, really interesting. So in the middle of all of this, Lizzie's cook, who's Japanese or Chinese, excuse me, he disappears. And so she is trying to find him because she loves him, and she doesn't like the idea of him being, sucked into a quarantine, obviously. And so she tries to find him, and in trying to find him, she finds out that he has a son, and his son has been living in the house secretly. And so she's trying to keep him safe, keep him fed, keep him secret. And she's also trying to find his father. And she uncovers all of these crazy secrets. Really, really wonderful. This is a section of history that just isn't talked about. And I think kids will really like hearing about the disease, the plague, which is, something kids learn about. But to have it show up so recently is kind of crazy. And it's the beginning of vaccines, and it's the beginning of bacteriology, and what do doctors believe, and how do you treat people. And of course, the raging racism is just crazy. So I highly recommend this one. I think it is a wonderful book. There's also really, really good afterword at the end, lots and lots of research. So I think that's all I have for you. Right now I'm reading Dumplin', which is wonderful, and Everything, which everyone keeps telling me to read, and it's wonderful so far. So I'm sure I will have more for you a little later this month. If you need anything from me, or if you have books that you think I should be reading, or books that you want to recommend for one of the book awards. Each book award has a recommendation place for you to submit, and my email address is, of course it's not on that page. Why would it be on that page? Hold on a sec. There you go, right here. Send me an email anytime, and I'm happy to talk books all day. Have a great week and enjoy this fall weather, and I will see you soon.